light, answering freedom's call. Ageless warrior, brand new day.
Today is the
Join the alliance. Come one.
and today's about earthing, as we just mentioned, and it's reclaiming that earthing connection in a wireless world. So if you've been around for the decades like I have, you know, we would dial up phones. No, dial up phones, and that was all. Hey, talk to my friend Bungie, and it was like error code. No, there was no error code. It was just like four numbers, and we've gone way beyond that, of course. And it's not been to the detriment. It's been to the detriment of our health, but it's all really to produce more profits for the big corporations and the way that they've taken over. So, in this age of constant digital noise and disconnection, discover how to tap into your primal energy. And let's go for this. We're going to be looking at how to restore your bioelectrical balance, and understanding how modern living creates an overcharged state. Well, actually, it's undercharged, but they have all of the electrical engineering backwards in all of this and all of this stuff that they talk about. It's really confusing. So I'm going to demystify a lot of that. Activate your emotional pressure valve and learn how to shift your autonomic nervous system from corporate flight or fight into the powerful rest and repair, and release the emotional tensions and stress. Going to optimize your cognitive clarity and discover how the quiet, dirty EMF noise that leads to brain fog and why it does, enabling you to enhance your intuition and leadership decisions when we get away from the detrimental effects of the Wi-Fi signals or not being grounded. And to anchor into your spiritual bio sovereignty, to reclaim your inherent connection to the Earth's intelligence, moving from a wireless unit to a rooted participant in the natural order. And also to prevent the cellular, quote, rust and boost on longevity. And finally, we're going to be talking about the etheric grounding connection that completes the circuit that no one else seems to notice even. So it's more than a webinar. It's a call of action to transform your well-being and executive performance. Will bridge the gap between hard biophysics and deep human experience, moving you from skeptical to sovereign. And so let's have a look at this first slide I've got here. The is retirement just the end, or is it just a cellular crisis? And if you've been following on these Sunday what do we call them? Sunday motivational broadcasts that I'm doing, I have been really emphasizing the voltage connection, which is the big time missing link, because nobody really understands what it is. And when they think they do, they've got it actually inverted. And as you'll see when we go into examining the grounding effects, we're going to really dive deep into that, because what happens when we ground and we touch in with nature, which is all around me here, we go into a different state. And it's not just the grounded state. It's more to do with the state that's around us. And if you look at the image up here, it's more to do with, let's get rid of this guy. It's more to do with the image of this woman here. She is grounded with her bare feet, but it's also this etheric connection coming into us from the ethers. And that is so important, because the etheric connection really does complete the circuit. So it's not only just re-energizing the body, but it's re-energizing the mind, and at the same time really connecting into the ether, because that is the source, as we're going to look at. As you know, I have been working with the dodecahedron a lot over the last 40 years, and the reason for it is because it's essentially an antenna into the ether. It is the geometric equivalent of how the ether is condensed into matter, and we're going to go into that. And we talked about this in a previous briefing. We also talked about the heart not being a pump. How can the heart pump all the blood through, what is it, several thousand miles of capillaries? I forget the numbers in there. We also have to really examine this mass indoctrination that's going on that we don't even know about. So it's kind of like our beliefs are not really us. Our beliefs are what we've been taught to believe, and that is part of that mass indoctrination issue. You know, if you look back at prehistoric societies, if you look back at this sort of, and we're going to talk about this one later, is the fact that, as soon as society went in and civilization started to grow their own crops and foods, everything started to change and blah, blah, blah. We became a civilized, so-called civilized. But my take on that is actually the opposite. As soon as we started to make these crops and started to disconnect and from just natural tribal living of moving around, that's when things started to really mess up. And it started to started to enslave us to the food model. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of fasting. And I was looking at some studies this morning whilst I was writing my book, and it was like, there's been a huge increase in the number of studies, peer-reviewed studies on fasting since 2017, basically. And around year 2000, there were like maybe 50 on average per year. And now there's more like 350. And in 2017 and just before COVID, that number began to just really take off. And so there has been a lot of interest in doing that. And also, a lot of things that need to be changed. And one, of course, is the nutritional model. And so that's going to happen. And also this cognitive dissonance, we have this what is it called? The bias towards thinking that we know it, right? And because we were taught this and we spent all these years in so-called schooling, which of course is deschooling, and we think all of this stuff is like true. And my 30 million volt discovery, which we discussed on January the 18th in the voltage Sunday briefing, we got to get open to really objective proof or truth. And, if you examine those peer-reviewed studies, I developed an AI prompt that I can really dig down into the authenticity of a peer-reviewed study, because it was like quite apparent to me from what I've been learning that peer-reviewed doesn't mean peer-reviewed at all. It means that somebody's put up a lot of money and they're going to change everything around in order to match the status quo so they can get refunded for the next job. Last week we looked we looked at the Rebels Toolkit and the 7 Vagus hacks, and we did different exercises, and at the end you'll see this lift that I do with the microcurrent, and it's just like really, really, really amazing, because it really resets the parasympathetics. So what I'm working towards in this month is towards this core command, and it's really the integration of the brain stem between the brain and the rest of the body. And I did these core command studies for a number of years, and with clients too. And so this is all to bring us to a place where we can not only is this theory, but it's actually practical application as well. So in this site here, now let's see if I can get it up. I have, damn it. Maybe I can get it up. Okay. On my other side, I did a long article on earthing therapy, and it was basically Clint Ober's work on grounding. Now, if you look at Clint's writings and the clinical stuff and the they have it upside down. It's like inside out. What happens when the body becomes de-energized? The voltage in the cells goes low, and you need more voltage, electricity, back into the cells in order to bring that cell membrane and everything else in the body up working properly. So I'm going to invite you, if you're on the call right now, to download the earthing therapy PDF that I made of that article that we wrote on eBody fusion. And if you can't get the download right now, go back to eBody or type in search eBody fusion and plus the word grounding, and it will take you there. So let's get on to really simply explaining stuff here. And this is my kitchen. It's an outdoor performance kitchen spot. And I've been modifying my solar system this year so that I can use more electricity instead of propane for cooking. And so what I've been doing there, excuse me, whilst I wind up the window and hold the rain outside. What I've been doing there is that when that floor is damp, I noticed the other day when we had some rains, I mean, this is maybe a month ago, when the floor is damp, one of these burners that I have up on the counter here next to the sink, not burners, it's an electrical element heater. If I touch the pot that's on that stove, on that heater, I will get electrical shock going through my body into the damp earth underneath. And that is when things are damp. You get a really, really good connection. And then, this is not for most people, but it's like, this is an example that you really need to think about. It's if you're going to be walking around barefoot, it's way better to be walking around on damp soil or in the ocean or on the side of a lake, where there is damp water, or it's even better to get in the lake or in the ocean. And because the grounding there is just going to automatically happen. And if you're in the ocean water, you're going to get the infusion of the different minerals and etc. as well. And, this kitchen shock thing that I learned was like when the floor there dries out, when doesn't get wet, it gets damp, I guess. When it dries out in a drought that we've been having, I can now go and touch those pots that are on that burner, and I don't feel any electrical tingles going through my body whatsoever. Now, there's another thing I want to introduce you to here, which is called the fair weather effect. And let's hide this one, and let's put this one up whilst I talk about it. The fair weather effect. And the fair weather effect is that during dry times in fair weather, every meter or every 3 feet above the ground, there's around 100 volts of potential. And when it gets damp, that 100 volts gets sucked down and it dissipates because the molecules and the water in the air are dissipating and grounding it out. So what happens then is that the positive beneficial charge that is condensing out of the ether into the atmosphere, and that's what we need to really work on. The manifestation process out of the ether, and some people want to call it spirit, and I rather avoid that terminology because it gets into a whole bunch of religiosity, but it is spirit if you come from that place. It is also prana, Gaia, chi, life force, 0 point, and a whole bunch of other names that they conjured instead of using the original name, which was in the Greek aether, A-E-T-H-E-R. And what they wanted to do was, of course, make it like proprietary. It's like, branding it in a different name. And the people that branded it into whatever the name was that they wanted to call the ether into, quantum theory is one of them, is it really removes from the essence and literally conjures superstition that things work according to quantum theory, or things work according to 0 point energy, or whatever you want to call it. The process that they have conjured is crucial to understanding, and whatever the word is about reversing indoctrination, de-indoctrination, I don't know. And so when we have like this condensation, an effect on the mitochondrial membrane voltages, we have a whole different shabam of potentials, which are voltage, but also beyond the voltage of this manifesting, condensing, and crystallizing effects within the cells and all of the biochemistry in the body. So it's electrobiochemistry that we're talking about. So true health sovereignty is achieved by understanding this nature of the human body, and is fundamental need to understand this for your earth connections. And so the challenge is, the wireless stuff, and the goal is to get beyond the state of skepticism to one of sovereignty by applying hard biophysics to your daily life. Now, one of the earthing things that's really stands out is this study, and this is actually what I used in that article that I was referring to on e-body fusion earlier on. You'll see it there. This is a study that was published by the journal of, let's see if I can move this out of the way, but the journal, and of cortisol levels of somebody who's in graph A, somebody who's in an unstressed individual. The cortisol levels rise shortly after that you get up, or in the early morning, and then drop off by noon, and they drop right down by nighttime. Now, if you are depleted in energy, let's call it that way, which manifests as the whole spectrum of inflammatory diseases, from Parkinson's to swollen joints, to whatever the pain. It's like the whole spectrum is really dependent on that electrical voltage. So this is where grounding comes in, because it can restore the electrical voltage. And it does that by feeding, or rather draining off, the positive, which is not positive, but they call it positive, the positive deficit of electrons, because again, they call electrons E minus. It's not, it's E actually plus. So it was another way that they had this whole shabam of particle physics and periodic tables. Everything that everything that you see, everything out there is the opposite of what we've been taught. And until we get beyond that indoctrination, you don't have, it's very difficult to get to what I'm really really talking about here. And it's taken me many decades to really acknowledge this, and to really sort of come to admit to it, because it's so different to what everybody is talking about. But the rebel in me, the rebel Benedict, is here to really challenge those false beliefs. So in graph C, we're looking at the altered patterns of the participants after earthing, and the significant stabilization of the cortisol levels. I mean, look at that. It dropped from, highs up in the low 80s to the highs in the 50s, right? So there's a, 40% drop. Amazing. Now, how do we do that? Well, whoops, wrong way. How do we do that? We would do it, as I've been saying, by restoring the cellular voltage, the biological ground wire. Now, I really want you to think of, when I was touching on the stove, the electrical, and being grounded, I could feel the electricity off the element coming into my fingers, going down my arms, and rippling down into the floor. So what we're doing is we're really wanting to reconnect into and recharge the body. I'm not saying that you go and put your fingers into an outlet on the wall and hold on to the grounded prong in there. In fact, that is the opposite of what you want to do, and I'll show you why in a moment. You know, the metaphor is a lightning rod. An ungrounded executive is like a skyscraper during a storm with no way to divert the strike. You aren't tired, you're overcharged. So unless you have that lightning conductor that's anchored in the ground, that reaches up into the heavens with that, or into the sky, or into the clouds, and brings that charge and anchors it down, it will lock in to whatever it can lock into. And I don't know if you've ever been close to a lightning strike, but I was holding onto a rail in Irving there and doing the early work on this back in this would be about 88, I guess, 1988. And a lightning bolt hit this railing just above me, and my hand was on the railing, and I got this jolt through my body, which was way bigger than the mains jolt that I was getting off the stove. And it was like, a lightning bolt. And, I was barefoot at the time as well. And barefoot is important. Now, I don't know if off the soles of your feet and hands, there's always a very small amount of perspiration that's going on. So what that helps when your feet are on the ground is that it helps to make that bioelectric connection with the ground. Now we could talk about, let's go to this slide here. Can't remember which one it is at the moment. Let's see, maybe I'm beyond that one. Come on, move up. Yeah, okay. So what we're talking about here is the cell membrane voltage. Now here's another false fallacy, which is that the cell membranes have a bilipid layer. It's not true. The bilipid layer is because under an electron microscope, they have used a whole bunch of basically drying the cell out, and they've used heavy metals to show up on the electron microscope that go on one side of the membrane to the other. And it appears like it's like and they call it a bilipid layer. Actually, it's not a layer at all. It's plasma around the cell membrane, and we'll get into that later, and the work that was done around that, which, is so much to cover. This 90 or minus 90 volt, right? It's not this is what we want. We want a negative surplus of electricity in the cell to really function the cell and everything else that's around it. Now they've got this basically sodium pump model, which is false again, but we can't get into that right now. So let's look at some grounding practices. The science is that the biogenetic noise from dirty non-native EMFs and I have a quick clip here that I'm going to play, and it's going to really detail.
That means that you can transport metals, transport nanoparticles into the brain by using EMF frequencies, by using cell phone towers, by using routers, by using cell phones. And not only that, it also increases the permeability of the intestinal lining as well. So when you look at all of the chemicals that are being put in the food supply, the metals, you look at why are they spraying us with chemtrails? You have nanoparticles of aluminum. You can pull that up for geoengineering. All of these different components, we now know how the EMF component is put into this whole picture, because now they can open up the brain, basically bring any type of nanoparticles, metal or whatever they want into the brain, which can be controlled now with EMF frequencies and with the rollout of 5G and the rollout of all the...
So, yeah. He's I forget his name, but he's the doctor, the chiropractic doctor that has been really outspoken. And we're going to look at some more of his work in a later one when we talk about urine. But back to the biosovereignty and the electrical grounding. The sacred science is that the biosovereignty is becoming the rooted version of you, and in the natural order rather than disconnected component of the managed system. And like the manas, the spirit requires a base that extends deep into your core, because you're an extension of that Earth's and the universal intelligence. So we got to really, keep this in mind, is that because you have low energy and you've got inflammation, you've got chronic pain and this, that, and the other, yes, the grounding is good. Go walk, especially if you can get your feet damp and walk. Basically, I remember reading some stuff back from the 1800s where people would walk through the fields early in the morning where the grasses had the dew on the grass, and then that would wipe against their legs. And that would also actually greatly increase the charge and greatly energize the system back and dump off the old dross and energize the system in its place. So where are we? Over here. Keep on moving it around. So the Amakua relationship. The Amako is the higher self. It's Hawaiian for the higher self. It's this vertical causality that brings us down. When we use, say, the Ujjayi breath, or we use breathing techniques, we're bringing that ether connection into the upper lobes of the nose here, into the bottom of the brain. And we're bringing that ether connection across into the brain. And when you go into a fasted mode, especially after day 2 or 3, 4, you will really notice how powerful it is, because the body is so much more receptive to noticing those energies, because it's not cluttered and gummed up with all of the extra foods and trying to detox from, everything, no matter what it is. And the body has the amazing ability to do that. So we got mitochondrial biogenesis, this power cord, and this voltage audit. And so the cellular rust, which is what it is, it's like the cells are beginning to rust away and the components within the cells need to be detoxed, autophagy in terms of fasting. And the more charge that you have on the body, the more of that autophagy and that cellular rust can be detoxed out of the body. And so grounding acts as that master switch for antioxidation. Similarly, the voltage, the the microcurrent, let's get this right, mitochondria, the mighty current. No, the many currents that we get off the electrical stim devices that I showed in the other talk, and actually your unit is on its way to you, and Teresa, and so that voltage connection is greatly amplified when we've got this voltage audit. And that slide I showed you earlier where we were looking at the points on the face, that is a way of balancing the brainstem and getting that communication happening, but it doesn't need to go that complicated. It's just a matter of applying that voltage, which is accepted way quicker into the body than if it were, walking around or bathing. It's like it's the fastest way that I know of getting the body electrically balanced. And so that is the practice of doing that, so that to identify where you are leaking the voltage and where you need to charge it. So, for instance, when I overeat for a few days, my hip will start hurting, and if I overeat for a month, my hip will hurt so much that I can hardly get out of the car. If I fast within 3 days or 4 days of not being able to get out of the car because the pain was so bad, that pain has gone away completely. That's how quickly we can change things around, and when we know what we're doing. So with the grounded, architecting this grounded life, go out in nature, walk in the park if you're in the city, get out, do whatever you can. And when you're out there, also connect into the heavens, connect into the sun, connect into that light energy that's coming in. And then hopefully you've got enough bare skin that you're going to get enough light into the skin. And we'll look at that component in a later Sunday briefing, because it's really important to understand that this is not just one or the other. It's nature's way of, like with all the plants, they rely on sunlight. Guess what? If the sun wasn't there, we wouldn't have life on this planet. And if you go back to and if you've downloaded the first chapter of my book, and I suggest you do, and please like and subscribe to this, is that first chapter, I talk about a lucid dream where I was taken into the sun, and in that chapter you'll get the description of what I saw inside the sun. And that is that amazing place, that amazing energy and resource that we have through connecting from the earth into the sun. And it's the reason why we have this, amazing planet around us and all of these different life forms that we've so effed up in our process here. And because we didn't know any difference. So this is an invitation to secure your executive voltage audit and the bioelectrical assessment, and with me. And I just completed one with Teresa the last week and gave her the update on that as to things that she can do to enhance her connection into the through the process that she's going into with me. And again, back to this facial nerve mapping blah 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 thing, is that when we measure these points, we can really connect back into the brainstem. When we get these points balanced, that's when we get this total communication between up here and down there, and into the grounding. So I've been running along here, and boy, we're already 36 minutes into the recording. And so yeah, architect your blueprint. We have these weekly Sunday briefings. Please come on back, and also become a member of the AWA, which is the Ageless Warrior Alliance, and just join the rebellion. Claim your sovereignty. And it's a monthly membership, and it's only $1 a month. So you get the weekly strategic briefings, the exclusive intelligence that I bring to you, and you will nurture yourself from this knowledge. And we've got this warrior community that's building now, and you're going to get the founder's advantage of locking in your lifetime rate and gain early access to the upcoming book launch. So join us. So let's see, we got like this closing here. Whoops. Things just disappear on me. I'm back. So as we conclude today's briefing, let's look at how far we've come. In January, we completed the Great Rethink. We deconstructed the machine metaphors that have limited your potential for decades, and mine. We revealed that your heart is a vortex, not a pump. Your immune system is an intelligent gardener, not an army at war. And today we've continued the next phase of the rebellion of architecting your inner system, the inner system. We're moving from theory to adding new tools to your rebel's toolkit. And you've seen how earthing allows us to have a direct dialogue with your nervous system. And I revealed the massively important etheric dodecahedral connection about grounding. And we need to explore that ongoingly because it is the major connection that's missing from science.